I actually found this cartoon in New Yorker magazine back in September of 2009. And when I was thumbing through the magazine and I saw it, I read it, I laughed. And then I went back and I thought, no, this is more than a funny cartoon. This really speaks volumes. This is literally what we deal with every day. So here is my take on it. Aside from the funny caption, take a look at this guy's posture and his positioning. What he did was came into this flower shop, literally tore through all of these flowers to get right to the counter. And you see the way that he's standing there. He's hunched over. He's physically intimidated by the process of ordering flowers. So he's standing there, resting his hand on his wallet, ready to spend whatever she can tell him to spend. And I think everybody agrees with me up to this point. What I want to stress to you, what I want you to realize is that this is 90% of the customers that you deal with every day. Whether that customer is in the guise of a middle-aged desperate man like this guy, or the proverbial dear old grandma, or a teenager who just, got his first kiss and wants to buy flowers for his girlfriend. They're all in the same boat in the sense that they don't know anything about flowers. They are all intimidated by the process. They want to be guided. They want to be told what to do. Unfortunately, we don't realize that, or if we don't realize it, we don't capitalize on it. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later on. But when you see this guy standing here, if you think about it, if she were to say to him, I have some agapanthus, he's probably going to look at her and say, well, how want you to be contagious? He doesn't know what that is. What the customer knows and understands is color. So we'll talk about that as well. It's much easier to sell colors than specific flower names. And clearly I spent too much time with this cartoon, but I also thought, for all we know, she could be the bookkeeper. She could be on her way back to her desk from going to have a cigarette. And it just so happened to be that when he walked into the store, hers was the first face that he saw. So automatically, by default, she becomes the expert to him, meaning he doesn't know if she's a florist or she's the bookkeeper. He assumes she's a florist, but he doesn't know if she's worked there for 2 weeks or 20 years. Doesn't matter. Just by virtue of her being on the other side of that counter, or had he called, just by virtue of her picking up that phone, she's instantly the expert. So it's just another way where I want to show you that you've got this incredible power over the customers. They're going to absolutely, totally go with whatever you suggest to them. In the majority of the case, I would say probably my personal experience, because I take several hundred orders a month, is that 95% of the customers will listen to me make a suggestion. So hold this thought in mind, and we're going to move on. The next slide that Mark is going to bring up is going to talk about, or show you rather, forbidden questions. Basically, in the flower industry, when a customer calls and a customer comes in, bearing in mind what we just talked about in that cartoon, we still, unfortunately, bombard them with questions. So rather than make it easier for them to shop with us, to the contrary, we ask them all these questions that just make them feel smaller and smaller and smaller and more and more and more intimidated. So what I'm going to teach you is that these are 4 miserable questions that you need to banish from your vocabulary. I'm going to tell you why, because you'll probably lose your balance when you see some of those. And I'll tell you what the alternatives to asking these questions are, which will actually save you time, streamline the entire sales process, and make customers feel more comfortable. And when a customer is comfortable, a customer spends more money. And that usually cycles around to that customer coming back and shopping more frequently. So it really is a win-win. Now, the 4 that I'm going to give you today aren't necessarily presented in any order of importance. They're all equally egregious and heinous and wasteful and miserable. So let's have at them, and I'll show you the first one. The first one is the proverbial, how much do you want to spend? Funny thing is, when I'm on site at a flower shop, and I hand this worksheet out to the staff, it's blank, and I tell them we're going to write these in together. When after my whole prelude, and I ask, well, what do you think one of these horrible questions is? Top of mind for everyone is, well, how much do you want to spend? Which is kind of funny. Everyone knows it, yet we're all guilty of it. Here's the thing. As soon as you ask a customer, how much do you want to spend, you are artificially limiting what they're going to spend. So you literally just put a cap on what they're going to spend at your store. Secondly, it's just ridiculous and it's unprofessional, because name one other business that does that. And for the life of me, I can't, except another flower shop. And I'll give you an example. When was the last time you walked into a jewelry store and they said how much you want to spend? When was the last time you walked into a pizza joint and they asked you how much you want to spend? It doesn't happen. They're going to find out what your needs are. They're going to make a recommended suggestion and then ultimately let you make your decision based on knowledge. That's what we need to do with your customers. There's one other element of this question, is how much you want to spend, that I think is horrible. And that is, customer, let's say he's driving past your store and he just got a call from his daughter that she's pregnant. So this is going to be her first child, by default his first grandchild, and he's elated. He's already picking out names and envisioning playing ball in the park with the grandchild. So he comes into the flower shop and he said, I just found out I'm going to be a grandfather. I want to order some flowers. So what do? We greet him. We're probably friendly, but we essentially start off by saying, well, okay, how much do you want to spend? Now suddenly he's got to take like a 180-degree turn because he wasn't thinking about money. He was thinking about pleasing his daughter. He was thinking about sending a gift. But now you painted into a corner and you literally made him just pick an arbitrary dollar amount out of thin air. So he says, I don't know, $50, $60, when had you used the approach that we're going to talk about, might have spent even more. So I think you get my point. You can't ask this question. Instead of asking this question, what you're going to do is make an appropriate suggestion to a customer. Okay, number 2 of the forbidden questions, which has to be banished, is what do you want to send? This takes us right back to the mindset of the cartoon. When you ask the customer, what do you want to send, think about it, because it's happened already today in your store. All that you do is you start a game of verbal ping pong. Customer comes back and says to you, I don't know, what do you have? You take a deep breath and you give him a verbal inventory, and you tell him, well, we've got fresh flowers and silk flowers, and we've got plants, and we've got fruit and gourmet baskets, and we've got. You've given this guy little snippets of about 12 different product lines. His blood pressure is literally rising. So after spending the time and energy, he asks you, well, what do you like? And you say, well, our roses look great today. And what does he say? Okay, great, I'll take the roses. So asking somebody what you want to send is crazy. Again, you walk into a jewelry store. Hi, what do you want to buy? Jewelry, it's why I'm here. No, instead what they're going to ask is, are you interested in something for yourself, or is it a gift? Oh, you're looking for a watch? Did you want a leather band? Do you want a metal band? They're going to qualify me. So rather than asking somebody, what do you want to send, I'm going to say to them, in as many, however you want to phrase it, do you have a gift in mind, or would you like a suggestion? Where I'm basically saying to them, when you came into the store, when you called, if you had already decided what you want to send, wonderful. We'll just type up your order. We'll fill it in on the computer. But if you don't know what you want to send, that's fine too, because I can make an appropriate, educated suggestion. Okay, let's look at forbidden question number 3. What's the occasion? This is always the one that causes gasps when I present this. And the reason I don't ask what the occasion is because I don't care what the occasion is. Quite honestly, I don't care if you had triplets or bunion surgery. Asking that question doesn't help me to give you better service. And I'm going to give you a classic example of how it's counterproductive. When you are taking an order, pardon me, out of order, and what I mean by that is if you make the fatal, expensive mistake of taking the card message after the product, you're doing your business a disservice, you're doing your customer a disservice. And here's what I mean. Think about how this has happened to you in some capacity or another. Because I remember I made this mistake in the beginning. Gentlemen would call in, I want to order some flowers. Great, I can help you. What's the occasion? Oh, it's my wife's birthday. Okay. So I maybe talk to him about a dozen roses. Or I just suggest a beautiful arrangement filled with garden flowers in his wife's favorite color, maybe $75. So he says, oh, that sounds good. Then I go on to take some delivery details, and then I ask him the card message. And his card message has said something to the effect of, Dear Carly, happy 50th birthday, can't wait for our weekend in Paris, all my love, Eric. And then I'm thinking to myself, darn it, this guy, I would have said a lot more than darn it, but this guy was just sold a $75 arrangement, but he just gave me at least a $150 card message. And it's very awkward to then double back and say to him, oh, now that I know that you really, you've got deep pockets, this is what you should be spending. It's virtually impossible to do that. However, had I used the program written or use a program configured in a way that would allow me to gather delivery information, then card information, when I got into product information, I'm not selling blind. I'm selling from a standpoint of education. So I could even factor that into my suggestion to him along the lines of saying, oh, wow, 50th birthday, that's a milestone. What about 50 roses? Or factor in that it is a milestone birthday, that he's taking her on this expensive vacation. Give the guy the opportunity to spend more. The worst thing that he could have said to my offer of a $200 arrangement was no. But if he was never given that opportunity, he's never going to buy it. So, moral of the story with number 3, clearly you need to know if the flowers are going to a funeral or to a baby shower, but asking what's the occasion, total waste of time. And finally, the fourth of the 4Bidden questions is going to be, do you want your total to include delivery and tax? This is a really, really expensive, nasty habit that a lot of florists have. And, pardon me, over the past few years, as the price of gas has gone up and everybody realized, good grief, we're not charging enough for delivery, and they started charging more, there began to grow an apprehension about even telling that to a customer, or even worse, a feeling of guilt on on behalf of the staff for charging this much. So I'm going to give you 2 examples of, again, where we as an industry need to learn to listen better. First customer calls and says, hi, I want to send some flowers. I want to spend $70. Okay? What I would hear is that this guy is going to spend $70. We're going to create a beautiful arrangement to that value. We're going to add delivery. We're going to add tax. We're done. Second customer calls and says, hi, I want to send some flowers. I want to spend about $70 total. With that second customer, because he put a qualifier on it, whether it's him saying $70 total, $70 bottom line, $70 is my final cost, then and only then would I say to him, oh, when you say 70 total, do you mean including delivery and tax? And he says, oh, yeah, I've got a prepaid Visa card, so I really need my total to be 70. And that makes sense. However, and I know that everybody listening to this is guilty to some degree at some point, we don't discern between the two, and we ask every customer. So we would have asked that first guy. And that first guy who was content or planned on spending 70 plus, now when he was given that option, well, do you want your total to include delivery and tax? He says, sure. So now what happens? His wife doesn't get a $70 arrangement. She gets a $53.19 arrangement. So that means the shop is making less money. You're putting fewer flowers in the design. she getting less of a flavor of what you're capable of creating?